A very warm good afternoon to everybody present here on behalf of the Research Committee on Gender Studies, RC10 of Indian Sociological Society. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's special program, a thought-provoking book discussion on gender, law, and social transformation in India. This event is a part of our ongoing efforts to foster meaningful academic conversations to understand gender justice and social change. The book we are here to discuss today, Gender, Law and Social Transformation in India, offers rich insights into the intersection of gender and law in the Indian context, highlighting both persistent challenges and transformative possibilities and its significant contributions to both sociological and legal scholarship. It brings together critical perspectives on how gender shapes and is shaped by the structures of law, policy, and everyday social practices, and hence provides some multidimensional perspectives on gender justice, exploring how legal mechanisms have shaped and been shaped by social movements. And it is important to mention here that this book is an outcome of the first midterm conference of Research Committee on Gender Studies, RC10 of the Indian Sociological Society. So today we are honored to have a galaxy of scholars joining us. Professor Vishwajit Ghosh, who will be chairing the session, Professor Abha Johan and Professor Ajayu Nimay. They both are the speakers for the session. So let me briefly introduce to you our great scholars. Professor Vishwajit Ghosh is the Associate Dean of the School of Liberal Arts and Culture Studies, Professor and Head of Sociology and Mentor of the Political Science Department at Edmus University. Previously, he served as Vice Chancellor of the University of Burdua, West Bengal, and was a senior professor of sociology there for 31 years. Professor Ghosh completed his education at the University of Calcutta and Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has held visiting faculty positions at several universities in India and abroad, published 141 articles, including books, reviews, e-contents, and study modules, and authored 3 major policy documents for UNICEF, the Government of West Bengal, and Save the Children. Professor Ghosh has edited or written 6 books, and UGC Vidwan has awarded him a score of 9.7 out of 10.10. He is currently editing The Dialectics of Development, Challenges and Contestations from Cambridge. Professor Ghosh has coordinated UGC Pathshala e-content on research methodology and social movement in sociology and has nearly 1,002 Google citations. Serves on editorial boards of several reputed journals and senior fellow at the Indian ICSSR. His research and teaching interests are Indian society and culture, industrial sociology, development environment, social movement and studies. He has served as a member and treasurer of the Managing Committee of Indian Sociological Society from 2014 to 2016. A warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to chair this session. So
thank you very much.
We have 2 speakers today, Professor Abha Johan, Professor Ajayu Nimay. Professor Abha Johan is a professor at the Center for Kashmir Studies, Central University of Himachal Pradesh, Dharamshala. She taught at the Department of Sociology, University of Jammu for 21 years until March 2023 and held several academic and administrative positions. She received her PhD degree from the JNU, New Delhi. Her research interests include gender, tribal and community studies, kinship, marriage, sociology of religion and culture, conflict and borderland studies. Her recent edited books are an ISS volume, 100 Years of Sociology in India, Evolving Issues, Emerging Trends with the Ajayu Nimay and Tattvamasi Palta Singh 2025, Gender, Law and Social Transformation in India with the Ajayu 2022, the book being discussed here, and Understanding Society and Culture in India, a study of Sufi saints and deities in Jammu region in 2021. Besides member of other national and international organizations, Professor Johan has been the Managing Committee member, ISS 2002 to 2007, RC10 convener, Secretary 2016 to 2017, and the President of Indian Sociological Society 2022 and 23. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us today.
Thank you, Rajni.
Professor Ajayu Nimay is a professor of sociology and former head Center for the Study of Social Inclusion, University of Hyderabad, and a senior research associate Department of Sociology, University of Johannesburg, South Africa, 2022 to 25. She was a visiting fellow, Department of Sociology and Anthropology, West Virginia University, USA in October 2024. A visiting fellow on postdoctoral fellowship at the Gender, Women and Sexuality Studies, University of Iowa, USA. She has published articles on gender issues like sex trafficking and labor trafficking of women and children, women's sexual health, tribal studies, migration, in reputed journals like EPW, Indian Journal of Gender Studies, the Sociological Bulletin, Contemporary Voice of Dalits, The Man in India, Journal of Social and Economic Development. And she's a guest editor of the special volume on gender inequality and social exclusion, Journal of Social and Economic Development, Springer Nature. Her book with Professor Abha Johan includes Gender Law and Social Transformation in India and 100 Years of Sociology with Tatwamasi and Abha Johan. Tatwamasi Palta Singh. This is April 2025. She has served sociological associations at the regional, national, and international levels in different capacities. She's the Asia regional representative of RC32, Women, Gender, and Society of ISA, Spain. She is a member of the Managing Committee 2020 to 2025, former convener of RC4, Migration and Diaspora Study. She is the founder and secretary of the Sociological Association of Northeastern India, 2022 onward. Her academic work has been featured in numerous media outlets, including the Times of India, India Abroad magazine, based in New York, The Statesman, The Deccan Chronicles, Telangana Today, and many others. Thank you so much, Professor Abha and Professor Ajayu, for consenting to be the speakers for the day. So I congratulate you for the editing of this book also. And I now hand over the stage to Professor Vishwajit Ghosh for chairing the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rajni, for introducing the speakers. It's a wonderful opportunity for us who worked on the volume on the gender issue that you have mentioned. Abha and Ajayu jointly edited that volume. And I also had a piece there. There are many others, very wonderful, very well thought articles. I would first of all request Abha to begin the discussion today, and then it will be followed by Professor Ajayu. So Abha, please join us in discussing your arguments.
Thank you so much, Professor Vishwajit Ghosh, for joining today and chairing this session. At the outset, I must thank Dr. Rajni Bala, the convener of RC10 ISF, Dr. Sudeshna Mukherjee, the co-convener, and everybody who's present here. And also thank the contributors to this volume, which is, as already said, and Ajayu would give a more detailed account of this, as she said, because this conference of RC10 was held in the University of Hyderabad, which when she was the convener of that particular conference, and I was the convener of RC10 in 2012, and it took, of course, a long time for us to publish it, and this was released at the conference in the University of Science and Technology in December 2022. So this is basically a compilation of papers which are presented in that particular conference. And I think RC10 actually set an example of producing books based on the papers presented in the conference. This book was released there. So the book actually has 4 sections and 15 papers. And the forward to the book is written by Kalpana Kanabiran, and I think we are thankful to her for taking out time and penning down a few words, which are, of course, really very useful and really give a good start to the book. The 4 sections actually include human trafficking, prostitution, and child trafficking. The second one was sexual harassment and related criminal acts. Third deals with domestic violence against women. And then the fourth is on gender and legal rights. So these are some of the 4 sections that the book is divided into. Since I would really try, time is limited, I would try to limit myself to some of the issues and why we actually chose to bring out this particular book. Because there are three very important words in this book. The title, one is gender, the other is law, and the third is social transformation. And of course, all these things are related in the context of India. So the first point that I would like to raise is this, that there is a very close relationship between gender and the idea of social justice that comes through laws and their implementation. And we need law in society because of the violence and violation of basic fundamental rights of people, rights of all kinds, whether they right to live, work, property, move around, decision making, good health, and education, some of which have been brought out in the papers here. So, with the question of equality, and then which gets related to social justice, I think we prefer the term law because it deals with the whole issue of social justice and fairness, unlike equality. Because when you talk of equality, it starts that equality for all. But we know in our society, Indian society in particular, and most of the societies which are hierarchical and unequal, and women are discriminated and people of different genders, we cannot start with the notion of equality. There is an issue of equity that people talk about, that according to the needs of the people. So the idea of social justice, which is related to the formulation and implementation of law, I think something very important. And I would just say that for the discipline of sociology, and most of us are in that discipline or have been for a very long time, the discipline or the issue or the concept of law is something extremely important, because law is everywhere. It's not only the question of violence, but even the question of the violation of fundamental rights. I said even the right to like health and education, to right to work. So everything is related or pertain to law. Of course, law in itself is not enough, and formulation and its implementation, but it's very closely related to society and what happens in the society. So therein comes this question of how gender law is related to the notion of social transformation. And when we talk of gender, we know that it is a question of intersectionalities of different forms. We talk of poor women, of the class or the Dalit women, the caste, the religion. Even in my own study of women in the border areas of Jammu, I saw that women who were illiterate, and I did some narratives on widowed women. I could realize that how vulnerable they were. So it is not just the forms of stratification that we talk about, but different kind of vulnerabilities that make women's position a very, a very different, and of course require a special focus. So I think all the papers in this particular volume actually also bring us out the intersectionality of various dimensions, and urges us to look at them from a particular feminist standpoint. Not only a feminist standpoint, but a standpoint of a particular kind of women that there are. So if you say a poor woman, a Dalit poor woman, illiterate women, all combined, probably it could be a very different scenario. So this has been brought out, and how law in its multiple forms, something which I take from Kalpana's forward to this book, expresses itself as an instrument of social transformation and change. So this is what has been there. And why law is related to society? Because each one of us come from a similar kind of society. The social structure, the constraints, the hierarchy, the domination that is there, whether in family, school, religious institutions, education, etc. And even the judges and the lawyers and the entire judicial system actually comes out from there. So you see that how there is a connectedness and interrelatedness. When I talk, one of my very good friend is a professor of law, and she mostly talks of law and also the legal provisions and the lacuna in those also, which many feminists would talk about, those who study from law point of view. But studying from sociological point of view, I would say that how law is related to society, how is it implemented? If you see Bhavri Devi's case of 90, in Rajasthan, when the High Court judgment was given and the Supreme Court laid down its guideline in 1997, when the group of Vishakha, like the called Vishakha, fought against it because the High Court actually gave decision against her. I know most of us know because we are into also women's studies, also women's movement, very closely related to our women's studies movement. So, this Sathin, the women development worker trying to raise consciousness against child marriage, was raped by a group of men. And when she went to the court, the High Court acquitted those people, saying that high caste men cannot rape women of a lower caste. So this kind of mindset actually comes from there. Or in Vishaka's case, the rape case, the infamous case of 2012, you see the judgments, the statements given by the lawyers and the judges. So that mindset of society also perpetuates the judicial system, and there is this close relationship between the two. Guinea, like in her paper in this volume, analyzes 4 cases of sexual harassment of judges of the Supreme Court and a Delhi District Court between 2012 and 19. One of the papers actually shows that how judges were so biased against women and how their decisions actually impacted their lives. And so judges are not above society and the kind and the nature, the context of the society. So when in gender studies we say, we talk about law, we question the myth of the neutrality of laws and show how existing laws help to sustain the unequal power relations between women and men, and of course between different genders. So patriarchal structures operate at all levels and constraints and restrict people and women in particular. So we see that conviction rate is low. It takes long time, and even in Nirbhaya case, it took 7 years. And there is this immense stigma and shame attached by the society, whether in the case of rape or domestic violence, sexual abuse, trafficking, and prostitution. And I think Ajayu Nimoy's paper here on human trafficking and Bhandari's paper also on human trafficking and prostitution actually brings out this. Juhi Mohan's paper also brings out sexual abuse of the girl child, where she says that incidents are not at all or very limitedly reported, acknowledged, and accepted, and there is a huge social stigma attached to these. Thus many scholars and activists argue for gender-specific or gender-sensitive laws, not gender-neutral laws. So this is the point that I want to bring out. And such laws, and of course, have the effectiveness and implementation also affects women's development, empowerment, their well-being, whether education or even nutrition and health. And they, of course, have to be supplemented by support structures, social, psychological, economic, and all, legal and political as well. So sometimes these measures help us, as also shown in Vishwaji's paper on child marriages, that schemes like Kanyashri and Swayang Siddh, which he pointed out, have proved to be revolutionary and help reduce crimes against women, especially the girl children. It is, I feel, that therefore important that women are involved in the lawmaking and decision-making processes. My own paper in this volume is on gender and rights of permanent residents of women of Jammu and Kashmir, and how Article 370 and then 35A actually violated the fundamental rights of these women till they were like Article 370 was abridged and 35A was abrogated. And similarly, Ghulam Dastagir in his paper also brings out the significance of women's participation and leadership in farmers management and irrigation system in Tamil Nadu. Or Azra Abidi's paper on education of Muslim women to the need for specific policies and programs for Muslim women's education. And she, of course, also say that we need specific policies and programs for their development. Though it is argued that implementations of laws are important, it is also seen that to have a particular law is equally important. And I will just focus and probably trying myself to be brief, but it's such an important book and there's 15 papers, so I'll take just little more time. that having law is one and implementing law is another. Some people say that implementation is important, but we feel that even having law is important because certain laws came only in the 21st century. It was not that violence was not there. It was not that women were not discriminated or girl children were not treated were treated well. So, but there are certain areas that we do need law. Of course, judicial reforms are required, as I said, but there are certain areas, like for example, Rani Rohini Raman. She focuses on very important as area, which I have also written one paper on honor killings. There was a bill in 2010, but somehow that bill could not become an act because of various reasons. And the issues, if there are 5,000 cases of honor killings in the world, 1,000 are in India only. So this is an issue, a very important issue of a great magnitude, but we don't have a law till today. It's in the pipeline. So there are still certain areas where do we need new laws and different kinds of laws to tackle the other problems. One more point that I want to emphasize, which have been raised in the papers in this volume, is related to women's movement, which has played a significant role in impacting policies and programs decision. And when I say women's movement, it is not people of the civil society alone, but people like you and me, the teachers, the lawyers, the doctors, the journalists, etc. Who have always been involved in raising issues. One or two issues come directly to my mind because as a student in 80s and then maybe 90s, the issues of dowry and rape became very important. And in 80s, particularly the dowry, the women are, brides are not for burning, and books came out, and there was this Dowry Prohibition Act of 1961, but then section 498A was inserted into the IPS, Indian Penal Code, in 1983 to make it more stringent and also effective, and also in 1986. So Uma Devi's paper in this particular book analyzes this section 498 of IPS, a legal instrument for social change. And women's movement actually plays a very important role to bring about the change. And similarly, if you see the rape case, I think all of us know, at least people of our generation, that Mathura custodial rape case, a young tribal girl of 17 years was raped in police custody. And who raised these issues? And I'm telling the students and people today that it is we who have to come out to the streets to fight the case. It is not that they are not happening today. We know Kolkata's case, we know Hathras case, so there and Nirbhaya, of course, and there's so many cases. I don't know. We can just go on counting, and probably there will be no end. So, but the voices are not there. The voices of people, the women's movement, and not only women, the people of civil rights, and everybody, the concerned people, have to be there to raise these issues. I remember as a student, two very good lawyer, not lawyers, actually the professors of law, Professor Upendra Bakshi, if some of you have heard, and Professor Lotika Sarkar, with whom I worked closely. They were the people who were actually drawing out, different laws, etc., and saying, after the Mathura rape case. So you see, this is a closeness and interrelatedness. It's not the law issue alone, and but they were lawyers, and people, lawyers like Ratna Kapoor and others, Lawyers Collective, etc. So there are NGOs, there are collectives, there are teachers, there are lawyers, and we, each one of us, who are researchers. And then there was this amendment after Nirbhaya case, the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013. So, and there was several other kind of laws, I feel, which came as a result or as an impact of women's movement. So, our teachers always used to say in gender studies that the change would come both the ways, when women, and sensitive ones actually, and maybe sensitive men also, and of other genders, who are there in the decision-making positions in Panchayati Raj, in development programs, etc. And equally, there is a force from outside in the informal level through the movement. So movement are dying out these days. I think they have to be made effective, because that makes the government accountable. That makes their decisions more sensitive to the people. So Nivedita Bain, like she brings out the role of organization in West Bengal, organization like Darbar, where they demand that women must have the legal right to sex work. It is a controversial issue whether sex work or the prostitution be legal, like in several other places in the world. Because women's organization realize that these women who enter into prostitution, they face a lot of problems. So if you give them license to work, the sex as work, probably they will not be held. It's a contentious issue. There are different views, but at least a section of women's women did feel like that. And of course, she relates to the reproductive health of women, because when you have license, you also have right to have a good health and proper checkups, etc., and about their children and all. So I think it's an important issue. Similarly, Deepti Tripathi also focuses on the history of women's movement for reproductive health rights in India. The PNDT Act of 1994 was amended in 2003 and became pre-conception and prenatal diagnostic techniques, prohibition of sex selection. And this happened because of the result of declining sex ratio and son preference. We all know it's altogether a separate chapter that sex ratio has declined over the years, and how these techniques have been, the amniocentesis, after that this technique have been used and misused rather, because of the strong son preference, and with the result that in states like where we have done our field work in Haryana and Punjab in particular, that there have been the shortage of brides. So sociologists like Ravinder Kaur and myself, we have worked on that how girls are brought from different states to Haryana and Rajasthan also, and UP and Punjab, from the eastern and the southern area. So that's another issue, but then also that goes into trafficking in women as well. So the acts like protection of women from domestic violence, which came in 2005, because it was realized Dowry Act is not enough. Dowry is like every act, every violence within the family is not dowry related, but it is domestic. It happens with the mother, the sister, even the servants and other people. So we had three papers in this. Vishnu Priya, in general, Soumya Rabe from Assam, and Saranjit Kaur from Jammu, writes about these from feminist standpoint and intersectional approaches. Uh, Other thing I have mentioned, but then you see, just maybe last point I would like to mention, that why did we have series of acts at the turn of the century? So it is 2005, the Domestic Violence Act, the POXO Act, which is Julie mentions also in her paper, Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012. Then several amendments like to the Dowry Act, to the Rape Act. Then from Bhavri Devi 1997 Supreme Court guidelines, ultimately we had the sexual harassment of women at workplace 2013, and which also I think very much related to the role that the women's movement actually played in our country. And of course, some people who are expert in these areas have pointed out to the lacuna in these laws and their implementation. And of course, we have to keep on revising and amending and updating these laws, which are actually also taking place. And some papers also emphasize on women's agencies to it. So the effort has been to bring gender and law as center stage to the sociological analysis that we all do. So gender and law has to be brought to the center of any analysis and understanding and that writing that we do. And there is need also for working on more effectiveness and implementation of law. How do the laws benefit or not women? How women negotiate and articulate their problems by using their legal rights, their agency, and trying to move beyond what is called victimhood paradigm. So there is need for this, and I think that this volume doesn't cover many aspects. Actually, how it is really implemented. I mean, only when we have papers like women suffering from domestic violence, like Saranjit paper did tell that what is the experience of women. But what happens to the woman when her rights are violated? She's beaten at home and all that. So I think that will be more sociological input to the study that we have done. But I'm sure this book will be a base, a kind of foundation for the further research in our sociological understanding and gender and law, that if we are interested in this area. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abha, for wonderfully summarizing the basic arguments of your book. As we have said, the book does not talk about each and every aspect of gender, but it does focus on certain salient aspects which probably we need to look into, and certain issues which are in common parlance being discussed today globally and also in India. So I think this book reflects more on the sociological perspectives of how gender and law intersect and what should be done. There are many good papers which not only deals with data, it only deals with what is being done and what is not being done. So this is a wonderful intervention, I would rather say. Before commenting on this book, let me invite the editor, the second editor of the book, Ajayu Nimay from the University of Hyderabad. Zai?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Actually, Ajayu is the first editor, I would just add up.
It doesn't matter. And thank you, RC10, Rajni, for organizing this. And thanks, ISS, especially the president and also the secretary for this opportunity. I would like to begin by saying that this volume, Gender Law and Social Transformation in India, which was published by Springer in 2022, is an outcome of a collective scholarly journey. And Professor Abha has meticulously, provided the details, discussed the details of each of the chapters. I'm going to talk about the journey part, and then I'll also mention about why we are hosting this, and what the book contributes methodologically in sociology. And the other point that I want to mention is some transformation traced by this volume, and transformation for whom, and then I will draw my conclusion. So as I said, that this book is a collective journey, a scholarly journey, and it is very, very special to me because it's my very first book. And also, secondly, RC10 Gender Studies is my first love in the ISS. When I joined long time ago in early 2000 as a lifetime life member of ISS, I joined in RC10, and since then I never looked back. As Professor Abha Johan clearly mentioned, this book comprises of 15 chapters, which includes an introductory essay, that means 16 chapters. It brings together diverse sociological engagement with the intersections of gender, legal aspects, and then the complex processes of social change in contemporary India. Its central sociological move is to track how legal change becomes social change or fails to across the courts, or police stations for crime, or for sexual harassment or trafficking or prostitution, and also welfare offices, workplaces, and other digital platforms. I recall that we both discussed about who might write the preface of this volume. As Professor Abha Johan already mentioned, there was unanimous agreement that no one could speak to its spirit and intellectual concerns better than Professor Kalpana Kanibaran, widely respected for her scholarship on gender and law. In her thought-provoking preface, she posed a set of reflexive questions, like, for example, in what ways does law, in its multiple forms and sites, operate as an instrument of social transformation? And how do we account for the fact that law itself is deeply social, with no such thing as, pure or abstract law, once we examine how inactions function in lived context? Professor Kalpana Kanibaran's framing urges us to see law not as a neutral edifice, but as an evolving social practice shaped by historical trajectories and also institutional cultures and everyday negotiations. So this perspective resonates throughout the volume, which kind of undertake an intersecting exploration of domains where gendered power relations are most acutely visible within the family, like domestic violence or honor killing and crime, which Professor Abha has mentioned from the chapters written in this volume, or the reproductive rights. And in spaces of violence like sexual harassment at workplace or sexual assault, honor killing, human trafficking, prostitution, and across social disparities structured by community, reason, and other axes of marginality or social exclusion. By situating these themes within both structural inequalities and everyday legality, this book advances a conversation about the possibilities and also limits and possibilities of law in India as a tool for gender justice. And in doing so, it aligns closely with what Professor Kalpana Kanibaran's call to interrogate not only the letter of the law, but also the social life of law. Secondly, although Professor Abha has mentioned, this book originated from the first ever midterm conference of RC10 held at the University of Hyderabad, where 174 members presented their research papers. The conference theme, which is also the title of this volume, actually provided a fertile ground for examining how law is not merely a codified structure, but a lived and contested arena shaped by caste, class, religion, gender, and region. I must also confess that, since this was the first midterm conference of RC10, we have a huge number of people who came. Now, from that vibrant academic exchange, we selected a set of strong, empirically grounded, and also theoretically rich papers. We really had a tough time of shortlisting the papers based on quality. When you have more than 100 papers, it becomes a challenge for us to narrow down, but we did spend a lot of time to narrow down and select those papers, which we feel are good. And the editorial process was a kind of extended, I remember 2020, 2013, 14, for 2 years, we started off, but I had to go for my postdoctoral research in the US and then had subsequent health challenges. So by the time we revisited the project in 2018 and 19, I remember calling up Abha and I said, we're starting this. Abha said, are you sure? And he said, yes. So that's how both of us started. But some of the originally selected papers had already appeared in print. It prompted us to commission and to invite 3 new contributions. And they are live members of ISS. Now, this inclusion of 3 papers, in 2018 and 19, kept the volume current and, kind of responsive to the evolving debates. And we also requested all the authors to update their data, which they cordially agreed to do so. So that was the background. And it's also important to recall that during the time of the conference in 2012, in September month, Professor Abha Johan was serving as the RC convener, as she also mentioned earlier, long before her tenure as a secretary and later president of the Indian Sociological Society. So this book, therefore, served as an archival record, of an important institutional moment. The first RC10 midterm conference, its intellectual outputs, and also the collaborative energies that made it possible. Now, in this sense, I would say that the volume is not only a scholarly resource, but also a testament, to collective sociological labor, academic solidarity, and the ongoing dialogue between law and society in our country. I must also mention that Dr. Rajni Bala, the current convener of RC10, continued the tradition by bringing out a volume of selected papers of RC10 in 2024 in December at AISC Munjal, and another new book, edited book of RC10 is expected to be launched by Dr. Rajni Bala and her co-author in December 2025. Let me come to the third portion of my talk, what this book contributes methodologically. I would like to mention two things. One is obviously interdisciplinary. We have papers based on sociology, gender studies, anthropology, legal studies. People from law school, like Professor Bishnu Priya is from law school of Osmania University, and also public policy, and all this in one conversation, essential for turning legal change into lived transformation. So the book contributes methodologically towards interdisciplinarity, And the second contribution of the book towards methodology is multi-sited evidence. Like we have courts, police, NGOs, community forums, not simply or just the judgments, And that's how I feel the book contributes methodologically in sociology and also in interdisciplinary research. The fourth portion of my talk is on how social transformation is traced by the volume. First, because the first few chapters are on human trafficking by Professor Biswajit Ghosh, Professor Subangmal C. Bandari, my paper, and few more papers on sexual harassment at workplaces. So we have the sexual harassment of women at workplaces, the Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal Act of 2013, and also coming to ITPA, Immoral Traffic Prevention Act of 1956, and then IPC 1860 and multiple other laws and acts, which focuses not only on the sexual violence, but also on regulating sex work and also on immorality towards recognizing trafficking as a violation of dignity, bodily autonomy, and labor rights. Now, moving beyond a narrow focus on sexual exploitation, the volume traces how Indian law and policy read, say, for example, trafficking across sectors, capturing coercion, deception, debt bondage, and abuse of authority. Secondly, family, family law is where equality meets culture. Reforms produces backlash, frame as community autonomy. Equally, community forums also can innovate gender just practices. So the sociological task is, kind of to specify when engagement with the customary bodies widens women's agency and to insist on non-negotiables. The question here that I want to emphasize, which is very much a core of the book, is transformation for whom? Intersection based on caste, region, sexuality, disability. I mean, this shows real gains, and who remains outside the arc of reform. And then the other important point is institutions that matters, which intermediaries, like, for example, bar associations or the self-help groups, actually translate rights into remedies. And then the court as a catalyst, because judgment rewire organizational routines rather than produce paper rights. Right? If conviction rates of, say, honor killing culprits or traffickers or pimps, if these conviction rates of criminals and case counts are blunt, what mixed indicators can track dignity, autonomy, and safety? Let me just wind up in 1-2 minutes. The book actually show that law is the terrain of struggle, not a magic wand. And I'm sure Professor Abha Johan would completely agree with me. Recognition without redistribution is brittle. Redistribution without recognition is unjust. And both are hollow without representation in the institutions that make and apply law. So the sociological task and the promise of this book, Gender Law and Social Transformation in India, is to connect legal texts to live realities. So the transformation is not only legislated, but inhabited in our everyday life. And that is the threshold between legislation and transformation. And it is precisely where this book asks us to work, And lastly, let me say that this book is available in Springer Link and Amazon and other websites. And the cost is pretty high, but thankfully, Rawat Publisher has signed a contract with Springer Link for the Indian and South Asian audience. And it's priced at just 1,596 rupees. If anyone is interested to buy, please let us know, ping me and Professor Abha Johan, and also request the audience from various colleges and universities to kindly recommend this book for your libraries. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ajayu Nimay, for your wonderful presentation. Now, before I end the discussion, if the participants, those who are there, the authors, if anyone would like to say a few words in short, you are requested, please. If there are contributors, if contributors want to add a few words, they can do it now before the discussion is concluded and come to an end.
Maybe you may like to say something on behalf of, as a chair, and also on behalf of
okay.
all.
Sure. Okay, now
Professor,
the two editors
Professor
have already.
Rajiv is there. Vishwaji? Professor Rajiv.
Yeah.
Hello, Abha. How are you?
Yeah, please.
How are you, sir?
Yeah, I am doing well. I was not doing well last week, but now I'm fine.
Good. Abhaji, congratulations to you and your team for such a thought-provoking book. I have not gone through the book because I am at present at Ahmedabad. So I did not get an opportunity to buy that book from Rawat. But there are several issues which, in fact, must be addressed when the issue of gender relation with structure of law and the possibilities of transformations are elaborated. Now, the first question which arises, Chairperson, sir, is law really an instrument now for making transformation? Because you can prepare several laws right from the colonial period till present, but the state character is basically of patriarchy nature. Patriarchal dimensions are there, and whenever we talk to the people belonging to media, judiciary, executive, etc., they also visibly or invisibly go in the support of
patriarchy. I was, in fact, I'm quoting one example from Gujarat. Recently, 3 or 4 days before, one heavy chorus, heavy corpus decision, inquiry was there. Heavy corpus inquiry was there before Gujarat High Court. Before Gujarat High Court, there was a love marriage which was opposed by the parents, and before heavy corpus took place on a particular date, 2 days before, her father and uncle, they murdered their daughter. They murdered, and that daughter was supposed to get admission in MBBS in 2 or 3 days. So now, if such kind of patriarchy is there, High Court did not pay attention earlier, but when the husband approached the legal institution, habeas corpus was filed. So I am of this opinion that if such kind of laws are there, but patriarchal structures are there to implement those laws, how can you construct this logic that law will become the instrument for social transformation? I am reminded with again what Marx talked about. Legal institutions are also part of superstructure. The same thing was argued by other Marxist scholars. If superstructure is supported or controlled by the state agencies, then all these discussions may be academically very sound, may be theoretically very sound, but when you go into the field, we find almost an opposite positions. So my request to the authors is, how can we create that transformation amongst people, amongst state agencies, so that patriarchy is challenged in a very, very effective manner, and then only I think gender issues can be resolved in terms of equality.
Thank you, Rajiv ji, for your wonderful comments. In fact, in the paper that I wrote in this volume, I reviewed two kinds of laws. One was the law related to child marriage. Okay. The other was the law related to trafficking. And you'll be surprised to know that what I wrote in the paper, that this law, which was framed in 2005, Child Marriage Prevention Act, it was framed with the patriarchal, sort of within the patriarchal domain, because the kind of laws and sub-laws being identified, it doesn't want to prevent child marriage. I mean, it does not nullify child marriage. If a marriage takes place, fine, it takes place. Yes. Right? It doesn't say it's illegal. Rather, it tries to say, well, marriage is sacrosanct, so they have to save the marriage. They have to protect the girl child, and the girl child is to be sent to in-laws' home. And when they become adult, then only they can cohabit. Yeah. So that kind of all absurd thing, and except one law, the domestic violence law, which was framed by lawyers collective, all laws framed by India, I mean, all lawmakers, patriarchally, 100% patriarchally biased, and they take into presumption the normal patriarchal things which guide us in dealing with law, in framing law, in also applying law.
And one more thing, sir. One more thing. Yeah. What is happening, sir? In Rajasthan is basically surrounded by culture of feudalism. So child marriage is taking place in the villages, in the small towns, and I'm surprised to inform you, sir, important political leaders, bureaucrats, police officials, and even the members of the civil society organization, they participate in child marriages. And when issues is raised, they say, look, all these are associated with our close social relationships, so we cannot go against that kind of act which is taking place.
Right. So, so again, in the trafficking law, when I intercepted with many police officers saying that this girl, minor girl, cannot be traced, they say, well, it could be a case of elopement. The girl might have flew away with the boy. and so on and so forth. So normally, a case is not seen from the gender perspective, which normally we are arguing about. But this volume also talks about what to do. Because I raised this issue of making these adolescent girls the agent of prohibiting child marriage, protesting against child marriage, which is happening in certain parts of Bengal. There is a club called Konyasri Club. There is a Konyasri is a scholarship, kind of scholarship. All adolescent girls, they'll get this scholarship, and they are the one who bring out these cases and report it to the either SSG members, Panchayat members, or other people. So it is through these people, sort of adolescent girls, that one can think of going beyond this patriarchal structure and do certain things. Well, I mean, one should not rely so much on the existing structure, including the politicians, because I have seen even the women members in Bengal, they are not so much interested in preventing child marriage because they say they have so many things to do. So many things to do, even the women members. And that is one of the reasons for which there has not been reduction in the number of domestic violence cases, trafficking, and child marriage, despite 50% of our members in panchayats are women. So, you just have 100% members in the panchayat. Nothing is going to change. The structure is going to remain. Okay. So, there is a sort of adjusting with the system, not going beyond the system. But adolescent boys and girls, when I went to Malda, a backward district, girls studying in class 8 and 9 came to us. I was a part of UNICEF team, told us, "Uncle, please go and tell our mothers." Mothers are seen as the agent, the main agent, forcing daughters to marry early, not fathers. So there are many other things that need to be done, and this volume does talk about what to do. And interestingly, which Ajayu has said, that since 2012, when the first seminar, RC seminar took place in Hyderabad, we had the time to revise our article. So probably this would be a volume, a longitudinal volume, because the theoretical argument was put forward in 2012 about the relationship between gender law and social transformation. Then all of us came back and looked into what is happening in 2020. So I have, in my paper, I have given data on 2020, what is happening now, and how the state is acting or reacting on how different other agents, including the law. So this is a wonderful addition to the body of literature, which speaks about not about the volume of the issue, but the issue, the way it is being tackled by the from within the law framework, and what is to be done. These are also being clearly mentioned in this volume. Thank you, Rajivji, for mentioning this issue. Is there anyone else who would like to, or I would pass on the microphone to Rajni Bala?
Can I add just one thing? Sir, thank you for this statement and your question. I agree with your statement. But I also want to mention, yes, law in India can be instrumental for social transformation, but it is, neither automatic or absolute, which you know very well. Its impact depends on how the law is interpreted and implemented, as well as on the political will and the pressure that push it into action. Like my work and Professor Biswajit Bose's work on human trafficking, we see that the law is there. Like, for example, ITPA, Immoral Traffic Prevention Act of 1956. But when we look at the implementation part, it is again patriarchal, as you rightly pointed out. I have repatriated a lot of girls, tribal girls from Northeast in Hyderabad to their original homes in the Northeast, and deal with the law enforcement agencies in Hyderabad as well as in the Northeast. And I can feel the loophole of law, and it is definitely patriarchal. But what we recommend in this book is to revamp this law, which are patriarchal, which are not women friendly. That is our appeal to the policymakers in this book. Thank you.
Just one
Good.
point, Vishwajit. I agree with the most of the point that you have said. Of course, I think almost every paper that you see in this volume, the authors have suggested this. They have pointed out to these aspects that where are the problems and what has to be done. For example,
Right.
domestic violence, the question of protection officer, etc. So I think these have been laws have been visited by many organizations who are sensitive to the issues of women as well as law. So I think that is one. And the other point which I have consistently emphasized in my presentation was that many of the papers have also pointed out to the role played by movement, the social movement. Like you have, when you want to bring about change, you talk about farmers movement, and you see the kind of impact it had, successful or not so much, that is another point. But consistently, like I said, when people were talking about changes in rape law, I talked to Professor Lotika Sarkar and Professor Upendra Bakshi, and we had teachers like that who are making intervention. So I would be a little more optimistic and would see the changes coming from within the society. There is patriarchy, but we don't have to just accept it and say that we can't do anything about it. I think to use also social media in a positive way, challenging the
Yes.
stereotypes and very typical notions. There, for example, Ajayu was mentioned about methodology, and I would also say that in sociology we always read of family as a kind of from a functionalist point of view, it's like women having expressive role and men having instrumental Parsons framework of analysis paradigm. But it's also a place of exploitation. It's a site of struggle where the papers on domestic violence and child sexual abuse, like one of the papers, like Juhi's paper, she has pointed out 17 case studies, and most of the perpetrators were acquaintances, related, but the moment you go out, you cannot file cases. So, but women have come out to speak that, they have been sexually exploited by the people they know most, the closely. So
Yes.
I think there are several challenges, and the last point I would just say that I have in the beginning only I said that judges and advocates also come from within the society, and a lot of people, lot of women have, and a lot of people otherwise sensitive to these issues have opposed to their arguments which they have given. So
Avaji,
I collective effort
I'm
from all
having
the
complete
sides.
agreement with you. But the most important question which is coming up again and again in my mind, society or one part of society, in fact, is now interested in making social transformation. But a state which was supposed to act as the catalyst for social transformation is now creating hindrance. So the process of social transformation within has become more difficult because state is not performing those desirable roles which are supposed to be. So there is a need to discuss the state-society interplay in the context of those laws which are in support of the vulnerable sections of the society. I found in such kind of atrocities amongst tribes, amongst farmers, amongst children, amongst so many vulnerable sections. But this thing is not happening because the state is not interested. If the state is neoliberal, along with the elements of patriarchy, how can you expect that they will be acting as the catalyst for social transformation?
The state has been coercive for a long time, sir, and maybe more. But I think that the civil society, the people, who have to play a very strong role, the students, the teachers, they have to come out of the streets. I think that's something very, very important. So if the market and state collide with each other, the civil society gets weakened. And I think the civil society and the movement, that has to become very strong, whatever said and done. So that's
Yeah. And one of the purpose of this volume is to make civil society aware of what is happening,
yes,
because it brings into focus the field reality. It reflects the data, hard data, and it says what is not being done and what civil society needs to look into. So my my salute to both the editors for persistently pursuing this agenda. And obviously, in 2030, we need to look into the issue of state, society, and law. That's the agenda coming
Professor
in
Biswit,
2030.
I will write a long note in the form of the review article of this book, and I think
we look forward to it. Yeah.
And that I will forward to you, so that because it's a very important issue and it must continue with ISS at least.
State, society, law, and gender. It has
right. Okay, then it's over to Rajni Balaji for her final comment.
So thank you so much. So you can see, so lots and lots of discussion. I'm very thankful to Professor Rajiv Gupta ji for joining us and for thought-provoking observations and making every speaker to speak again. So that is very interesting that because of him. So again, the new discussion started. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. So formal thanks to Professor Vishwadit Ghosh. Very, very thankful to him because he was not feeling well. He was hospitalized few days before. But even then, he managed to come to our session and chaired it meticulously. And he chaired one session in USTM also of RC10. I remember that. Thank you so much for always being there and for your continued support to RC10. A great thanks to Professor Ajayu and Professor Abha Johan. I always call them the pillars of strength of RC10 because if these people are around, so we can, perform in all these sessions and very well. So thank you so much for your very, very meaningful discussions and your inputs on this particular book. And congratulations from RC10 for this, for editing this book. So there were so many members of RC10 who are always there and continuously they attend all the sessions. I want to name some of them because at the last also some are still present. So Professor Amrit Srinivasan, she has joined because she will be delivering the next lecture on 20th in lecture series. So she was kind enough to join us in this session also. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time for us. Dr. Nirmala Devi from GNDU is there, Professor Sudeshna Mukherjee, co-convener of RC10, and she always helps us to make all these arrangements. Thank you, Sudeshna, for joining us. Dr. Abhinandan is there, Professor Arvind Chauhan. He is also there in the session. Thank you for the whole time you were there in the session. Thank you for joining us. Professor Dhananjay, Dr. Supriya, Dr. Mudassir, Dr. Sharad, Vrushali Das, Shubham, Shraddha, Shreya, Shivam, Shalu, Shamit, Satya Prakash, Sanjay Kumar, Rajkumar ji, Professor Rajesh Yadav, Zimbu, Nikhat Praveen, Mohit Chaudhary. In every RC program they are there. Meenakshi Bhagat, Lovania, Krishna Rao, Komal, Jinsi, Jayan, Bala, Dr. Lok Mudra Sen Gupta, she also joined. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Professor Shabnam Naz joined us. Anbu, Kavita, and Dr. Shreyan, Archana, Anupreet, and many others, and Yashi Singh, Ria. So many of them have joined, and thank you so much, everybody. So I request you to join us on 20th also. 20th, we are going to have 6 lecture on our lecture series. That is challenging of 21st century at gender perspective. This is going to be the 6th lecture in this series. So thank you so much. Once again, I was thinking of 4:30. So we have on dot, we are completing at session in time. So thank you, the chair and the speakers and all the participants and Professor Rajiv. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajni. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you.
To
Bye
see
bye.
you, Professor Arvind sir and Professor Gupta ji. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't hear Arvind Chauhan. I didn't see his face. Anyway.
He's there. He's there.
Yeah. I didn't see him. Anyway.
Yeah.
I can speak one sentence only. It is a very
Please.
It is very nicely organized seminar, and I'm thankful to Professor Vishwajit Ghosh, who took a lot of pains to come from hospitals to this particular program. And a lot of issues were to be discussed from my side, but I leave it for some other session. Particularly, I would like to mention one or two things. I agree with Professor Ghosh that a structural approach is important, number one. Number two, longitudinal studies are to be conducted. These were the fine points that I could gather from your presentation. The rest of the things I would like to speak in the next session, maybe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arvindji, for joining me. Thank you. I just wanted to see your face. Okay, bye-bye.
For young people who don't know, Professor Arvind Chauhanji is Professor Abha Chauhan's brother. So I mentioned to youngsters. I know many people know you. I don't have, but few are from some regions who may not know. I know you have served in Assam University in Silchar also, but the new generations, you know, some of them, I thought I will inform that both of you are siblings, and it's such a joy to have this.
Thank you.
Nice to have both of you together here in this session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.